नमः। चैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमा ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नामिने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी श्री राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणम्। So Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Yeah, as I mentioned, we'll be studying the pastime of Prithu Maharaj from today onwards. So Prithu Maharaj is this story, his whole story comes in the fourth canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he is actually a descendant of a very great devotee about whom we have already studied. Can anyone guess whose descendant he is? That devotee whose descendant Prithu Maharaj is has also been described in the pastime has been described in the fourth canto itself. Very great devotee. In fact, he is one of the two great devotees about whom Lord Chaitanya would love to hear again and again from Gadadhar Pandit. Something in the Dhruv Maharaj, yes. So Prithu Maharaj is actually the descendant of Dhruv Maharaj. Many generations down the line, but he is, and and that is actually mentioned in the verses that we'll cover today. So we'll do a small introduction kind of a thing, not so much of an introduction about Prithu Maharaj, but more like his. We'll give a trailer into the kind of prayers that he offered to the Lord, and so Prabhupada quotes his prayers at multiple places, and especially in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada has quoted Prithu Maharaj thrice. Very beautiful prayers, and then we'll study the chapter in which King Vena is exhibiting his tyrannical power on his citizens. So that, and then after that we will try to see some few lessons from that. I've done a small, I don't know, let's see, a small fun table which kind of lists out a few things, and let's see if that makes sense and if we can get something out of it. So yeah, as I mentioned, Prithu Maharaj is Shakti Avesh avatar. Now, what is a Shakti Avesh avatar, right? There are different kinds of avatars, different kinds of incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Some are his plenary portions, some are his direct avatars, right? Krishna is, of course, Swayam Bhagwan. In the first canto, it is said, Ete cham shakala pumsa Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam, right? And so Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and then there are all these avatars. There are some direct incarnations, like the Dashavtar Stotra we say there are, so we list out 10 incarnations of Lord Vishnu or Krishna. So these incarnations are direct incarnations. They are the Supreme Lord. Like they expand. Like Krishna expands into these all. We have the Guna avatars, which are the three gunas, which are sorry, the Guna avatars are actually this Kshirodakshai Vishnu. So first is the Mahavishnu, who is lying down in the causal ocean. From the pores of whose skin all these universes manifest. That is one avatar. Then there is the Mahavishnu Karnodakshai. No, that is Mahavishnu is Karnodakshai Vishnu. Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the next expansion in which the Mahavishnu then expands himself into each universes. And Garbhodakshai Vishnu is so Garbha Udaka, right? So that's Garbhodakshai Vishnu is from whom Lord Brahma is born, from whose navel. And then there is Shirodakshai Vishnu. Vishnu then further expands to become the Paramatma in the hearts of all living beings, including all of us. So that is one category of avatars. Then, there are these Leela avatars, right? There is Ram Leela, there is Krishna Leela, and things like that. And then finally, there are these Shakti Avesh avatars. Shakti Avesh avatars are they are actually Jiva Tattva. They are actually in the category of the Jivas, but they are specially empowered to do something. They are specially empowered to do something by the Lord. Now, how do you identify Shakti Avesh avatars? They do something really extraordinary in one of the spheres of spiritual life. For example, it is said that even Prabhupada is a Shakti Avesh avatar. Uh, and the reason it is said like that is because he did something that was impossible to achieve, right? He preached, he took the message of bhakti from India to the Western world, right? And that is something which was considered, at least at that time, quite impossible. All the whichever devotees were there at that time, they knew. Even Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples, they knew. Even Bhakti Siddhanta used to say that the holy name will spread across the Western world and all over the world. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had predicted, he had these visions wherein he sees these Western people on a boat, dancing with mridangas and kartalas, which actually happened. Devotees actually did that after ISKCON was formed and everything. So that was Bhaktivinoda Thakur's vision as well. And the great thing that even Mahaprabhu had himself said, right? Prithivite achayada nagaradi gram sarvatra prachara hoibe mora naam, right? Everywhere, in every town and village, my holy name will be sung. But how exactly that was going to happen, no one knew, right? No one knew. Of course, Mahaprabhu knew, these great souls knew, but common people, they did not know how this is going to happen, right? And that's when Prabhupada entered the scene in the parampara, and then he made it possible. So it's like Krishna had invested the power of preaching in Prabhupada, the power of teaching Krishna consciousness, the power of spreading bhakti in Prabhupada. And that is why he was able to do this extraordinary thing of taking Krishna to the Western world. So similarly, it is said that Prithu Maharaj is the incarnation, the ruling potency of Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu, he invested his power of ruling over the world in Prithu Maharaj. And that is why Prithu Maharaj is known as a Shakti Avesh avatar. His appearance, his activities and everything, they're really divine. And so today what we'll do is, it's more of a background. It's more of a kind of forming the context in which Prithu Maharaj appeared. So, one sec. Yes. So, and then, yeah, there is the dialogue between Prithu Maharaj and the four Kumaras. And actually, Prithvi, Earth is known as Prithvi, right? And that is actually because of Prithu Maharaj. That will come in a subsequent pastime that we will see. You can see that picture over here as well. So, yeah, that is Prithu Maharaj. And So before we go into the chapter for today, I just wanted to share three instances where Prabhupada quotes Prithu Maharaj. And Prithu Maharaj is actually the exemplar of one of the nine processes of bhakti. Can anybody say which process he exemplifies? Like we have Shravanam, right? So the devotee who exemplifies Shravanam is Maharaj Parikshit. Then there is Kirtanam, or preaching the glories of the Lord, chanting the glories of the Lord. And Shukadev Goswami exemplifies that. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. Smaranam is exemplified by Prahlad Maharaj. Pada Sevanam, Lakshmi ji, she exemplifies Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet of the Lord. And then there is somebody put something in the chat. Yes, Archanam. So Prithu Maharaj is the exemplar of the process of Archanam. That's one of the nine processes of bhakti. And so obviously, Prabhupada quotes Prithu Maharaj in his, in his Nectar of Devotion, where he talks about the process of deity worship. Right. So here, Prabhupada writes, in this connection, there is a statement in the fourth canto, 21st chapter, verse 31 of the Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein King Prithu says to his subjects, my dear citizens, please note that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, is actually the deliverer of all fallen, conditioned souls. No demigod can perform this act of delivering the conditioned souls because the demigods themselves are conditioned. A conditioned soul cannot deliver another conditioned soul. Only Krishna or his bona fide representative can deliver him. The Ganges water, which is flowing from the toe of Lord Vishnu, falls upon the earthly planet and other planets and thereby delivers all conditioned sinful living entities. So, what need is there to speak of the deliverance of persons who are always engaged in the service of the Lord? There is no doubt about their liberation, even if they have stocks of sinful activities from many, many births. And Prabhupada writes here, in other words, a person who is engaged in the worship of the deities can minimize his stock of sinful reactions coming from many, many previous births. This process of worshipping the deity has already been described, and one should try to follow these rules and regulations seriously. So the process of deity worship, the process of archanam is being described here. So I was reading another book, which is a really beautiful book. I recommend you all to read if you have a chance. It's called The Experiences in Bhakti. It's written by disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada's god brother, OBL Kapoor, Adikeshav Prabhu. So he wrote that book and he writes very beautifully. There is he writes that bhakti is actually a science, not in the sense of science which can be verified through our senses, but science in the sense of something that is revealed from a higher authority. And that is true even in case of materialistic science. So one of the things that he writes there is when the devotee, so one of the laws of bhakti, he writes, is that when the devotee wants to serve the Lord accepts the devotee's service, right? But then he writes that, hey, the devotee who is a conditioned soul is on the material plane, and then the Lord who is transcendental is on the spiritual plane. So how can somebody on the spiritual plane accept service from somebody who is on the material plane? And there he writes the answer to that is the Lord, who is actually transcendental, manifests himself in matter, in stone. Of course, not any ordinary stone, but a special, it's all there in the Shastra. The Lord manifests himself in that deity, in that Archa Vigraha. And through that Archa Vigraha, the devotee, the bhakta who is on the material plane of existence can serve the Lord, who is on the transcendental plane of existence. So that is why deity worship is extremely important. And because the Lord is actually present in the deity, the deity is actually non-different from the Lord. So this is also there in many places, and that the deity is considered non-different from the Lord. That's because the pure devotee has actually invited the Lord to manifest within the deity, and that is the greatness of offering deity worship. So when we offer deity worship, we are actually directly associating with the Lord. So that's what Prabhupada writes here, and he quotes Prithu Maharaj over here. Then the next quote that Prabhupada does is, so this comes in the section where Prabhupada is uh, describing the devotees, the different categories of devotees who worship the Lord. And one of the categories is called as anugas, or followers. So Prithu Maharaj is considered as one of them. So here Prabhupada quotes Prithu Maharaj. So here Prabhupada writes, in the fourth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 20th chapter, verse 28, King Prithu addresses the Lord, saying, my dear Lord, it may happen that the goddess of fortune becomes dissatisfied with my work, or I may even have some misunderstanding with her. But I will not mind this, because I have full confidence in you. You are always causelessly merciful to your servants, and you consider even their menial service to be very much advanced. So I have confidence that you will accept my humble service, although it is not worthy of being recognized. My dear Lord, you are self sufficient. You can do anything you like without the help of anyone else. So even if the goddess of fortune is not satisfied with me, I know that you will always accept my service anyway. In one of the classes that I had heard many, many years ago, I mean, wow, I can't even say many, many years ago. I've been practicing not for many years, but there, Maharaj says in that lecture that um, when we do any seva, when we do some service, we should have this faith in our heart that Krishna is accepting this service. Krishna is there, he's accepting my service, and that is why I should do it in a very loving and in a very sincere way. That's what Maharaj had said in that class. So here, yes, so Prithu Maharaj is one of the anugas, or the followers, great followers of the Lord, pure devotee. So this is one, right? And the next is about liberation, actually. So we talk about liberation a lot, you know, yeah, oh, I want liberation from all this, right? And this tendency to get liberation also, it's there very prominently in the impersonalistic path of spiritual life, where the impersonalist wants to get liberated from all these miseries of material existence, right? And that liberation is considered to be a very great achievement, which it is a very great achievement, not not easily achievable by anyone. And but then here, actually, it is one of the characteristics of bhakti is um, moksha laguta krit, right? What that means is bhakti even makes liberation seem insignificant. Even mukti or moksha becomes insignificant when it comes to bhakti or a devotional service. So here Prabhupada is quoting again Maharaj Prithu, who is here being addressed as Adiraj, or the foremost of the kings. So here Prithu Maharaj prays to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. My dear Lord, if after taking liberation I have no chance of hearing the glories of your Lordship, glories chanted by pure devotees from the core of their hearts in praise of your lotus feet, and if I have no chance for this honey of transcendental bliss, then I shall never ask for liberation or this so-called spiritual emancipation. I shall simply always pray unto your Lordship that you may give me millions of tongues and millions of ears so that I can constantly chant and hear of your transcendental glories. So here Prithu Maharaj is saying he doesn't want liberation, right? Just wants service, pure devotional service. So that is a very interesting thing. And actually, this is what even Prabhupada actually taught. We'll come to that. We'll come to the ultimate goal of our spiritual practice, what devotees think it is. So yeah, these are three quotes by Prabhupada on Maharaj Prithu. So the first one is about deity worship Archanam. The second one is about you know uh, the having that faith that the Lord will accept my service, and then the third one is about bhakti being beyond liberation. So before yeah, actually, I'll just cover one more slide and then we'll open it up for a few points if anyone has, and then we'll go move on to the chapter. So this is the after Dhruv Maharaj, there are all these kings, Vatsara, Pushparna, Dosha, Vyushta, etc. And then finally there is Vena. we'll be talking about King Vena today. And then there is Prithu Maharaj, who is the son of King Vena. So yes, this is like the genealogy, the family, the descendants of Dhruv Maharaj, and where Prithu Maharaj comes in that. So yeah, anyway, so this is the kind of the first part of the of today's discussion. Anybody has any thoughts on what we covered so far? Any questions about Prithu Maharaj specifically? Okay, going once, going twice, going thrice. That's it. Thank you. So let's do the chapter. So there are 49 verses in this. No, sorry, this is not it. There are 46 verses in this. So maybe we'll do 15 verses each devotee. So as always, you guys can raise your hands if you want, and then okay, I'll start. Maybe I'll do the first 15. Uh, yeah, text one. The great sage Maitreya continued, O great hero Vidura, the great sages headed by Brigu were always thinking of the welfare of people in general. So actually, yeah, this is some context will be useful here. So we Prithu is the Prithu. I mean, King Vena is the father of Prithu, and the father of King Vena was King Anga. So Anga was a very righteous ruler, very great king. But then he left for the forest one particular day, and he suddenly disappeared, and then the kingdom was with no king. So that is always a problem, that there is no king. So that this is where the story starts. I mean, the story of King Vena begins. So Vallabh Chaitanya Prabhu, you raised your hand. Is that to read?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji. You want to go ahead for the first 15 verses?
Uh, the great sage Maitreya continued, O great hero Vidura, the great sages headed by Brigu were always thinking of the welfare of the people in general. When they saw that in the absence of King Anga, there was no one to protect the interests of the people, they understood that without a ruler, the people would become independent and non regulated. The great sages then called for the queen mother, Sunita, and with her permission, they installed Vena on the throne as the master of the world. All the ministers, however, disagreed with this. It was already known that Vena was very severe and cruel. Therefore, as soon as all the thieves and rogues in the state heard of this ascendance to the royal throne, they became very much afraid of him. Indeed, they hid themselves here and there as rats hid themselves from snakes. When the king ascended to the throne, he became all powerful with 8 kinds of opulences. Consequently, he became too proud. By virtue of his false prestige, he considered himself to be greater than anyone. Thus, he began to insult great personalities. When he became overly blind due to his opulences, King Vena mounted a chariot and, like an uncontrolled elephant, began to travel through the kingdom, causing the sky and the earth to tremble wherever he went. All the all the twice born brahmanas were forbidden henceforth to perform any sacrifice, and they were also forbidden to give charity or offer clarified butter. Thus, King Vena sounded kettle drums throughout the countryside. In other words, he stopped all kinds of religious rituals. Therefore, all the great sages assembled together, and after observing cruel Vena's atrocities, concluded that a great danger and catastrophe was approaching the people of the world. Thus, out of compassion, they began to talk amongst themselves, for they themselves were the performers of the sacrifices. When the great sages consulted one another, they saw that the people were in a dangerous position from both directions. When a fire blazes on both ends of a log, the ants in the middle are in a very dangerous situation. Similarly, at that time, the people in general were in a dangerous position due to an irresponsible king on one side and thieves and rogues on the other. Thinking, thinking to save the state from irregularity, the sages began to consider that it was due to a political crisis that they made Vena king, although he was not qualified. But alas, now the people were being disturbed by the king himself. Under such circumstances, how could people be happy? The sages began to think within themselves. Because he was born from the womb of Sunita, King Vena is by nature very mischievous. Supporting this mischievous king is exactly like maintaining a snake with milk. Now he has become a source of all difficulties. We appointed this Vena king of the state in order to give protection to the citizens, but now he has become the enemy of the citizens. Despite all these discrepancies, we should at once try to pacify him. By doing so, we may not be touched by the sinful results caused by him. The saintly sages continued thinking. Of course, we were completely aware of his mischievous nature, yet we nevertheless enthroned Vena. If we cannot persuade King Vena to accept our advice, he will be condemned by the public and we will join them. Thus, by our prowess, we shall burn him to ashes. The great sages, having thus decided, approached King Vena. Concealing their real anger, they pacified him with sweet words and then spoke as follows. The great sages said, Dear King, we have come to give you good advice. Kindly hear us with great attention. By doing so, your duration of life and your opulence, strength, and reputation will increase. Those who live according to religious principles and who follow them by words, mind, body, and intelligence are elevated to the heavenly kingdom, which is devoid of all miseries. Being thus rid of the material influence, they achieve unlimited happiness in life.
Thank you, Mataji. Krishnan Prabhu can continue. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. The sages continued, "O great hero, for this reason, you should not be the cause of spoiling the spiritual life of the general populace. If their spiritual life is spoiled because of your activities, you will certainly fall down from your opulent and royal position." The saintly persons continued, "When the king protects the citizens from the disturbances of the mischievous ministers as well as from thieves and rogues, he can, by virtue of such pious activities, accept taxes given by his subjects. Thus, a pious king can certainly enjoy himself in this world as well as in the life after death. The king is supposed to be pious, in whose state and the king is supposed to be pious in whose state and cities the general populace strictly observes the system of 8 social orders of Varna and Ashrama, and where all citizens engage in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead by their particular occupations. O noble one, if the king sees that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original cause of the cosmic manifestation, and the super soul within everyone is worshipped, the Lord will be satisfied. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped by the great demigods who are controllers of universal affairs. When he is satisfied, nothing is impossible to achieve. For this reason, all the demigods, presiding deities of different planets, as well as the inhabitants of their planets, take great pleasure in offering all kinds of paraphernalia for his worship. Dear King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with the predominating deities, is the enjoyer of the results. Of all sacrifices in all planets. The Supreme Lord is the sum total of the 3 Vedas, the owner of everything, and the ultimate goal of all austerity. Therefore, your countrymen should engage in performing various sacrifices for your devotion. Indeed, you should always direct them towards the offering of sacrifices. When all the Brahmanas engage in performing sacrifices in your kingdom, all the demigods who are plenary expansions of the Lord will be very much satisfied by their activities and will give you your desired result. Therefore, O hero, do not stop the sacrificial performances. If you stop them, you will disrespect the demigods. King Vena replied, You're not at all experienced. It is very much regrettable that you are maintaining something which is not religious and are accepting it as religious. Indeed, I think you are giving up your real husband who maintains you and are searching after some paramour to worship. Those who, out of gross ignorance, do not worship the king, who is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, experience happiness neither in this world nor in the world after death. Hare Krishna? Yeah. You are very much devoted to the demigods, but who are they? Indeed, your affections for these demigods is exactly like the affection for an unchaste woman who neglects her married life and gives all attention to her paramour. Lord Vishnu, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Indra, Vayu, the master of air, Yama, the superintendent of death, the sun god, the director of rainfall, Kuvera, the treasurer, the moon god, the predominating deity of the earth, Agni, the fire god Varuna, the lord of waters, and all others who are great and competent to bestow benedictions or to curse, all abide in the body of the king. For this reason, the king is known as the reservoir of all demigods who are simply parts and parcels of the king's body. King Vena continued, For this reason, O Brahmanas, you should abandon your envy of me, and by your ritualistic activities, you should worship me and offer me all the paraphernalia. If you are intelligent, you should know that there is no personality superior to me who can accept the first oblations of all sacrifices. The great sage Maitreya continued, thus the king, who became unintelligent due to his sinful life and deviation from the right path, became actually bereft of all good fortune. He could not accept the requests of the great sages, which the sages put before him with great respect, and therefore he was condemned. My dear Vidura, all good fortune upon you. The foolish king, who though himself very learned, thus insulted the great sages, and the sages, being broken-hearted by the king's words, became very angry at him. Hare Krishna.
Oh, sorry. I was muted. Nupur, you can go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Please let me know if my voice breaks, Prabhuji.
Is
Text
good.
31. All the great saintly sages immediately cried, kill him, kill him. He is the most dreadful, sinful person. If he lives, he will certainly turn the whole world into ashes in no time. The saintly sages continued, this impious, impudent man does not deserve to sit on the throne at all. He is so shameless that he even dared insult the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. But for King Vena, who is simply inauspicious, who would blaspheme the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose mercy one is awarded all kinds of fortune and opulence, the great sages, thus manifesting their covert anger, immediately decided to kill the king. King Vena was already as good as dead due to his blasphemy against the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, without using any weapons, the sages killed King Vena simply by high sounding words. After all the sages returned to their respective hermitages, the mother of King Vena, Sunitha, became very much aggrieved because of her son's death. She decided to preserve the dead body of her son by the application of certain ingredients and by chanting mantras, mantra yogena. Once upon a time, the same saintly persons, after taking their bath in the river Saraswati, began to perform their daily duties by offering oblations into the sacrificial fires. After this, sitting on the bank of the river, they began to talk about the transcendental person and his pastimes. In those days, there were various disturbances in the country that were creating a panic in society. Therefore, all the sages began to talk among themselves. Since the king is dead and there is no protector in the world, misfortune may befall the people in general on account of rogues and thieves. When the great sages were carrying on their discussion in this way, they saw a dust storm arising from all directions. This storm was caused by the running of thieves and rogues who were engaged in plundering the citizens. Upon seeing the dust storm, the saintly persons could understand that there were a great deal of irregularities due to the death of King Vena. Without government, the state was devoid of law and order, and consequently, there was a great uprising of murderous thieves and rogues who were plundering the riches of the people in general. Although the great sages could subdue the disturbance by their powers, just as they could kill the king, they considered it improper on their part to do so. Thus, they did not attempt to stop the disturbance. The great sages began to think that although a Brahmana is peaceful and impartial because he is equal to everyone, it is still not his duty to neglect poor humans. By such neglect, a Brahmana's spiritual power diminishes, just as water kept in a cracked pot leaks out. The sages decided that the descendants of the family of the saintly king Anga should not be stopped, for in this family the semen was very powerful and the children were prone to become devotees of the Lord. After making a decision, the saintly persons and sages churned the thighs of the dead body of King Vena
with great force and according to a specific method. As a result of churning, the dwarf-like person was born from King Vena's body. This person, born from King Vena's thigh, was named Bahuka, and his complexion was as black as crows. All the limbs of his body were very short, his arms and legs were short, and his jaws were large. His nose was flat, his eyes were reddish, and his hair copper colored. He was very submissive and meek, and immediately after his birth he bowed down and inquired, Sirs, what shall I do? The great sages replied, Please sit down, Nishida. Thus, Nishada, the father of Naishada race, was born. Hare Krishna.
Can you can complete?
Oh, it's the last
one
verse.
verse,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, sorry, Prabhuji.
No worries.
After his Nishada's birth, he immediately took charge of all the resultant actions of King Vena's sinful activities. As such, this Naishada's class are always engaged in sinful activities like stealing, plundering, and hunting. Consequently, they are only allowed to live in the hills and forests. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Ma.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
So, yeah, so this is the background to the pastime where King Anga has left the kingdom and now they want a king. And then, so it's like they tried to solve one problem, but then that ended up creating another problem. So they wanted to solve the problem of thieves and rogues because in the absence of a king, thieves and rogues flourished. Now they wanted to solve that problem. And in the process of solving that problem, they appointed King Vena as the king, but he was, another thief and rogue in a sense because he wanted everything for himself. So then it is very nicely described here. Where is that? Um, that ants in the middle, when a fire blazes on both ends of a log, the ants in the middle are in a very, very dangerous situation. So the people were like the ants, and then on one hand there are thieves and rogues, and on the other hand there is an irresponsible king. So then finally they did try to knock some sense into Vena, but he didn't listen. And finally it is said that these brahmanas were so powerful that they just said, huh, that's it. By saying this much, they killed Vena. So that was their power. And then, yes, from Vena's body, they churned from his thighs, and this Nishada was born. Bahuka, the father of Nishad race, and of course, the next person to appear is Prithu Maharaj that we'll see in the next chapter. But yeah, this is the whole background of this appearance of the tyranny of King Vena. So two things that I was contemplating on. The first thing being, so here it is interesting when these brahmanas try to reason with one second. Yeah. So when they try to reason with King Vena, he actually was not talking anything wrong, but he was taking something and quoting out of context. Like here he says, the king is known as the reservoir of all demigods, etc., etc. Actually, the king has that position. The king is actually considered to be on a very, very high position. He's supposed to be the representative of all the demigods, right? That is true. That is true. But King Vena here is using it for his own personal sense gratification rather than in a mood of service to the kingdom, right? So that is where this misinterpretation or cherry picking of certain things to prove our own point can be taken out, can be we can see here, right? I think in Bhagavad Gita Krishna says, right, among the men I am the king or something like that. Am I right? I don't remember now, but exactly. But he says something to that effect. And the king is actually a very, very, very important person. So, but yeah, here we are seeing that how King Vena is out of his pride and out of his selfish need for enjoyment, he's quoting Shastra. He's talking about certain principles that are correct, but he's doing that for his own aggrandizement, and that's the reason everything is getting messed up. So actually, the king, who is the reservoir of all demigods, etc., etc. Those kings are the Raja Rishis. They are the Raja Rishis or the saintly kings, right? So it's interesting that Prabhupada's, I had heard this from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu a few years ago. He said Prabhupada is so amazing in his translations. So in other translations of the word Rajarishi, I mean, if you just take the word Rajarishi and you break it down and you try to translate it in English, so Raja means royal and Rishi means sage, right? So the immediate translation is royal sages, and that's how many people translate the term Rajrishi as royal sages, right? But then Prabhupada doesn't translate it like that. He translates it ulta. So he translates it as Rishi Raj. He translates the term Rajrishi as saintly kings. So for him, the saintliness is what is important. So that is what is important in these kings. And these kind of Rajarishis have this position of being the reservoir of all demigods and whatnot. So yeah, that is one thing that came. I was uh, contemplating on that, how even even in Kali Yuga we see that there are so many translations of the Gita, so many translations of the scriptures in general also. But then this whole cherry picking happens, and then the whole mood is lost in that translation. So just like there is this verse in Bhagavad Gita 3.33, सदृशं चेष्टते स्वस्य प्रकृतेर् ज्ञानवान् अपि प्रकृतिं यान्ति भूतानि निग्रह किं करिष्यति. The translation is that even knowledgeable people, they act according to their natures. So what is the need of suppressing? What will you accomplish by suppressing? Nigraha kim karishyati, right? Is that verse is about 3.33. Now there is an organization that has taken that one verse and said Nigraha kim karishyati. Why do you want to suppress? Any desire for sinful activity you have, don't suppress it, just engage, right? Like this happens in the realm of yoga, so-called yoga, or so-called spiritualism. So that is one contemplation that I had. So before we move on to the next one, I just wanted to ask if anybody has any reflections so far from what we read and what we discussed.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
Prabhuji, in one of the verses,
Mhm.
it was mentioned that King Vena was mischievous because he is son of Sunita. So what is that?
Oh yes, so okay, let me share my screen again. There is a background there. So this Anga, right? Anga's wife Sunita, her paternal side, her father was the Lord of Death or something. Wait, let me just, yeah. Yeah, this is some background about King Vena. Just one sec. Great faith, our chanting away is not deficient in any way. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. So this is where once the great king Anga arranged to perform a great sacrifice known as Ashwamedha, all the expert brahmanas present knew how to invite the demigods. But in spite of their efforts, no demigods participated or appeared in that sacrifice. The priests engaged in the sacrifice informed King Anga, "Oh king, we are properly offered, or we are properly offering the clarified butter in the sacrifice, but despite all our efforts, the demigods do not accept it." And then we do not find any reason that the demigods should feel insulted or neglected in any way. But still, the demigods who are witness for the sacrifice do not accept their shares. We do not know why this is so. So then King Anga was greatly aggrieved. That time he took permission from the priest to break his silence and inquired from all the priests who were present in the sacrificial arena. Kindly tell me what offense I have committed. Although invited, the demigods are neither taking part. Right. Yes, so this is, yeah. O king, in this life we do not find any sinful activity even within your mind. So you are not in the least offensive. But we can see that in your previous life you performed sinful activities due to which, in spite of you are having all qualifications, you have no son. You have no son, but if you pray at once to the Supreme Lord and ask for a son, and if you execute the sacrifice for that purpose, the enjoyer of sacrifice, Supreme Lord will fulfill your desire. So that's for the sake of King, for a son, King Anga prayed and everything. Okay, the boy was, yes, that boy means King Vena. I mean, Vena that time. Was born partially in the dynasty of irreligion. His grandfather was death personified from the mother's side, and the boy grew up as his follower. He became a greatly irreligious person. After fixing his bow and arrow, the cruel boy used to go to the forest and unnecessarily kill innocent deer, and so yeah, he did all these cruel activities. So yes, the reason that he was like that is because from his mother's side, his grandfather was death personified. Yeah, I hope that is okay, Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhu, got it, Prabhu. Thank you.
Any other reflections, questions till we move on to yes, Krishnan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, how did you pick this chapter today? Because it's because it's such an opportune chapter for us to read as all this news is going on about how the the upcoming election is. So I'm a little surprised how you picked this.
I don't know. It was not intended that we match it with the ongoing political situation, but yeah, the Gaur Kumar Prabhu mentioned that devotees want to study Prithu Maharaj section, so and this forms a nice background, so that was the only reason I picked it. So, but yeah, this does describe a lot about Prabhupada writes in the purport actually in this chapter about how an ideal king should be. So yeah, he writes very nicely that a king should not levy taxes on his subjects unless he is completely capable of protecting them from everything, protecting them from danger and thieves and rogues. And then yeah, and then Prabhupada also writes that the king should be a devotee of the Lord, and yeah, many qualifications of a king are given in this particular chapter by Prabhupada in the purports. But yeah, thank you for reminding us of that. Yeah, and Prabhupada also writes that in Kali Yuga, there is the rulers are actually not up to the mark at all. Far from it, actually, Prabhupada writes. So, yeah. The last real Kshatriya I had heard was Shivaji in Maharashtra. After that, nobody is really a Kshatriya. He actually stood up to the standards very nicely. Shivaji. But after him in Kali Yuga, there is no real Kshatriya present, unfortunately. So, yeah. Anyway, so yes, so one verse that I wanted to yeah, we'll try to focus on this. Here, yes, the king is the translation is that the king is supposed to be pious in whose state and city is the general populace strictly observes the system of 8 social orders of Varna and Ashram. So 4 Varnas and 4 Ashramas, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. And where all citizens engage in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead by their particular occupations. So very important, where all citizens engage in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead by their particular occupations. So this is interesting. And then Prabhupada writes in in the purport, he explains the Varna and Ashram system. And then he says, in perfect human society, people are situated in orders of Varna and Ashram and are engaged in worshipping Lord Vishnu by their respective activities. Every citizen engaged in an occupation renders service by the resultant actions of his activities. That is the perfection of life. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 18.46, Yatha pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvam idam tatam swakaruna tam abhyarcha siddhim vindati manavaha. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, man can, in the performance of his own duty, attain perfection. So, yeah, and then Prabhupada, yeah, anyway, so this is what Prabhupada writes. So, I was contemplating on it, what does it mean to worship the Supreme Lord through our work, right? This topic has come up quite often, and devotees discuss this very often. What does it really mean, right? So I was putting together some small table that Krishnan Prabhu, you still have your hand raised. Do you want to say something or? Okay, thank you. So I was reflecting on this particular theme of so we'll try to discuss this. Of course, whatever I've done is not foolproof, and please correct me if there is anything. So we often say that, when bhakti yoga is where Krishna wants us to do something and we also want to do something. So the harmonization of Krishna's will and our will together is bhakti, right? So the first and highest level, of course, is, so there is something that we want to do. There is something that that is our nature or whatever you want to call it, we are good at, and things like that. And then there are the activities of bhakti yoga, or something that Krishna wants us to do, Krishna's instruction, right? So there are these two things, right? And then there is the fruits that come out of our work that we do, right? That the soul does. Now there are these three kind of things, columns that I have, and then and we'll see what is the result of doing or not doing each of these things. So the first one is, of course, the topmost spiritual life, where the soul wants to do something. Krishna also wants the soul to do that same thing. Okay, in that case, the fruits offered to Krishna is obvious, because Krishna wants the person to do something. And that is, of course, topmost spiritual life. The example being Arjuna, right? Because Krishna says to Arjuna that, you do whatever you want. Yeah, yathechasi tatha kuru. Then Arjuna says that, I'll do your word. What is that? I forget that verse. Anyway, so Arjuna replies at the end of the Gita, tells Krishna that Nashto moh smriti labdva tvat prasadan maya chuta stitosmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. I'll do your vachan, whatever you say, Krishna, I'll do. And then, so in this case, Arjuna wants to fight. He's a Kshatriya. Krishna also wants Arjuna to fight. And so that's the topmost spiritual life. But that is the ideal thing. It doesn't work that way, does it? Right? So often we want to do something, okay? We want to do something which we are good at, which is our nature and whatnot. But then that is not really, I've put a yellow dash here because it's not against what Krishna wants or Guru wants, and it's not even something that we've been instructed to do by the Guru, by our Guru or Krishna or something like that, right? But what we do in this is we offer the fruits that come out of that activity to Krishna, right? So I was contemplating that even doing that is good. There is good progress. It is known as karma mishra bhakti, wherein we do something that we want to do, that we are good at, and we offer the fruits of that activity to Krishna, right? This is good so far. Now we want to do something, like we are unclear of what we want to do. That is the third one that I did here. So what the soul wants to do is a little unclear, for whatever reason. At least for me, when the fact that I was sharing with some devotees also, I didn't become a software engineer because I loved it, I had a passion for software and whatnot. I just became because my brother suggested me to. I was unclear of what to do at that point. I still, actually, I don't know what I am really good at. Okay, so I'm in fact a little unclear, right? And then sometimes in that scenario also, what we do might happen to be what Krishna wants, right? In that case, there is a lot of good progress, but that may not be sustainable. The reason being that we are unclear of what we want to do, what we are good at. So it can either glide up to level 1, where we, after a particular amount of time, we realize that, okay, this is what I really want to do, and it aligns with what Krishna wants me to do. So all good. But then it could also go down to the 4th level, where there is something that I really hate doing, that I don't really like doing, but then Krishna, or the guru, or the representatives of the guru, they want us to do, right? So in that case also there is progress, because we are following the words of Krishna, words of the Vaishnavas, but that is not a sustainable progress, because we can't continue doing like that, right? And then the 5th we'll have discussion on this after I cover these. And then the 5th is, very, it's unclear what we want to do. And it's also unclear what Guru and Krishna want us to do. It's not that Guru has told us to do certain things. Sometimes Gurus tell their disciples that, okay, this is what you should do, right? Something like that. Or in case of Arjuna, like, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you fight, right? So both things are unclear, but whatever fruits we are receiving, we are offering it to Krishna. So most of us are in this category, right? At least I am in this category, that I haven't been instructed by my guru or anyone to pick the career that I've picked up. And at the same time, I don't even know whether this is the right thing to do for me as my psychophysical nature goes. So in that case also, because I am offering some fruits to Krishna, by the mercy of Krishna, by the mercy of Vaishnavas, there is some progress that happens, right? And the final 6th category I was thinking was something that the soul wants to do, but Krishna and Guru, they don't want the soul to do it, in the sense that, there was this person who came to Prabhupada and said that, no, a drunkard came to Prabhupada. And then, so drinking is actually not in line with any of the Shastras, or it's actually breaking a regulative principle also, right? But Prabhupada said to this person that if you remember Krishna, if you remember that this enjoyment that you're getting out of drinking alcohol is Krishna, then you will advance, right? That the lesson here is not that we should start drinking alcohol. The lesson here is that the pleasure that the person derives out of that alcohol is Krishna. If that person remembers Krishna, then slowly that person will progress to the point where the person gives up sinful life, right? So there is very, very slow progress if Krishna is remembered. Otherwise, this is sinful life straight up, right? So these are some categories. Now we'll open it up for discussion. What does it really mean to worship Krishna through our occupation? So yeah, there are some comments in the chat. But how do we know if what we are doing is pleasing Guru or Krishna? Or how do I know what Krishna wants me to do? Yes, so one way to understand that is, so Krishna is definitely not directly present, but Krishna has his representatives, right? In the form of Guru, in the form of Vaishnavas and things like that. So we can consult them. And then that is one way to understand that what we are doing is pleasing Krishna, or yeah. So any other thoughts on that? How do we think about this? Yes, go ahead. Somebody was.
Hare Krishna Chakravarti Gopal Prabhu, this is Lekha.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for a very deep explanation. I was thinking about like connecting job duties to pleasing Krishna or Guru. Is there a chance that is there a chance that we could be like overthinking, and this is a problem that I have. I really like overthink a lot about this, and I feel like that actually paralyzes me from even doing a simple duty. Like when I started trying to practice bhakti yoga, and the way I understood the message about like material world, Maya, all of that, and then I actually came to a very misconstrued and very wrong idea that okay, working is actually like bad, and then I started getting started getting averse to like I'm also like a robotics engineer, software engineer, averse to like hours to my professional life. Like I was like, okay, this is so bad. Like I don't know what else to do because I have loans to pay. I have to take care of my family, but I don't think work is good. And then that I actually hit like some level of like this was like 6 years ago or 7 years ago,
Mm.
some level of depression, and then I had this completely wrong idea of karma and work, and I just thought okay, making money by itself was like bad, and I was just like overthinking this. But then and I don't think I had the right environment as well back then to like kind of like understand this better. But over the years, and by my nature, I know that I'm a bit competitive. Like I like working on certain engineering fields. Like I like robots, and I have contributed to this field when I was a grad school, and I know, and back then I had some ideas on what I want to do for the betterment of this world. But then it took me a really long time to now again understand work through the lens of bhakti and be like, okay, no, this is an opportunity that Krishna's given me. Like I just like I know that I have these propensities, financial propensities, or like technical propensities, and
Mm.
it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is actually a gift that Krishna has given me, and I can actually render service through my work, and also render service through the fruits that I get from the work, like for example like salary or whatever, and the work itself can be of service. And because I'm at this stage and I'm not at any spiritually elevated stage, I can actually like use this to kind of pretty much what you said about Prabhupada explaining job duties. Like I can actually use this as a trigger, and progress, and there is nothing wrong in like and yeah, so that is the understanding I have now, but it took me a really long time and a lot of detours to like come to this conclusion. Do you question one is like, do you think this is a correct understanding? And question number two is yeah, maybe we'll just start with question number one.
No, definitely, it's a very nice understanding, and think that's how it's supposed to be. Also,
Okay.
that
Okay.
we think that that I'm doing this for Krishna, and actually the answer to this question is also it also comes in this Yatha Pravritir Bhutanam verse 18.46. Here
Mm,
Prabhupada writes that everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Rishikesha, the master of senses.
mm,
And by the result of the work in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one always thinks in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. That is the
mm,
perfection of life. So,
mm,
yeah, Prabhupada writes very nicely that the very thing that you just mentioned, that, okay, I'm doing this for Krishna, and that is why I should use the fruits in Krishna's service, right?
okay.
So that is
Mm,
needed. So definitely that work doesn't have to be given up, right? That is the main
yeah.
one of the main aspects of bhakti. Yajñarthat karmano anyatra lokoyam karma vandana tadartam karma kaunteya muktah sangha samacharaha. So if you do something
Mm,
without without if you do something for your selfish whatever thing, and
mm,
that becomes lokoyam karma bandhana, it binds us in this thing, in the
mm,
karma of good and bad. But then if we do the same thing as yajñarthat, as an offering to Vishnu, then that
mm.
is that is good. But then see, this is where it gets really subjective. So
Ah.
when, okay, you offer the fruits of like we offer the fruits of our activity to Krishna, right?
Mm,
uh,
mm.
so does that in and of itself guarantee that we are doing it for him, right? Something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
is it like, it is definitely not something like Arjuna did. Arjuna
exactly. Yeah.
Arjuna's
Yeah.
occupation was directly in line with what Krishna wanted.
Yeah.
But that is
Yeah.
not the case with us. There is an indirect connection through our fruits, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is the thing. So this is definitely good, and I guess even I do that same thing as you mentioned, that I try to
Yeah.
at least in some way think that this is for Krishna, and then do it. But then yeah, and then I offer the fruits. But then is it
Yeah.
really, I mean, is there anything more to it? That is the thing. That is the question. Any more reflections on this?
Can I just ask like a follow-up question? If I
Yes.
know it's short on time. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. That actually makes a lot of sense. So the question that you just asked, if whether is there anything more to it?
Mm,
Um, y- and I'm very inspired by like Shivaji Maharaj, right? Because he actually like did his Kshatriya Dharma, and he actually like there are a lot of stories about like Ma Durga actually presenting him with a talwar. Like he's definitely like a really inspirational Kshatriya. But like um in terms of anything more, that should we even be like thinking about that question? Because um at least for me, I feel like that question is something that I will think if I am in some very like elevated realized state. Like I see everything in my life, every aspect, every situation that plays out, happiness, distress, everything through the lens of Krishna. Then I feel like maybe it might make sense if I look at it from that eye. But otherwise, like, do I have, because sometimes thinking about it on a level when I'm not ready for it, my and I've seen that it actually like impedes my progress, because I just get like paralyzed and I just get stuck and I just end up in a rabbit hole. So, and I was just finishing this book called 5 a.m. Club, and I read something very interesting. It said something like, I might just have it right. It said something like unused talents are actually like is actually like disservice to God. I forgot the exact quote. Okay, it says that please remember that gifts and talents neglected become curses and sorrows. I just found it to be very striking, because I feel like all of us, we have very unique uh, ways of like serving Krishna. So should I even think about, should I just do my work for the, is it okay if I just do my work for the fact that I just like my work and I want to be in this field and do something good, versus like, trying to think about how do I connect it with Krishna, and then like getting stumped by that thought process because I'm just not at that stage. Sorry, I'll just talk to this question. I don't want to
No,
take.
no. Very relevant points, but from what you said, I think you are in this second category here. You're clear about what you want to do, right?
Mm,
This is
mm,
what robotics is what you wanted to do all along, right? But there are some people like me who are here. I don't know. So sometimes I feel I should have done better in another field. I mean, I could have done better in another field and things like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, sometimes I feel like I should have been a stand-up comedian, but most of the times it's robotics. Okay, but yeah, I see your point. I see your point.
See, and for some, this becomes a very, very serious question, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is what that's where it becomes like you have to really decide now. Yeah. But anyway, yes, Krishnan Prabhu, you have something to say.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I was reminded of a Wisdom of the Sages episode.
Mhm.
This is the episode where they were in Italy, and Sachidanand Maharaj did a Q&A. Obviously, this is a more extreme situation.
Mhm.
One of the devotees, he is actually a drag performer. So, he dresses up as a woman, and his job is an entertainer. He's an entertainer, and so
Mhm.
he's very conflicted with the role that he have, the job that he has. So
Mhm.
he poses this question to Sachidanand Maharaj, and Sachidanand Maharaj gives a very detailed answer, and a very, and I thought it was very eye-opening. I don't think I'll do it justice.
Mhm.
So I'll try to find the episode and share it on the group, and maybe it's worthwhile listening to. The answer is worthwhile listening to. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, please, Prabhu, if you can find it, that will be amazing.
Yes. Essentially, one thing that I do remember is, even if he does quit the job, but if he thinks about it all the time, then Sachinandan Maharaj says that would be worse. So you can actually, I think there's a verse in the Bhagavad Gita about akarma, not akarma, about even by not doing, you could be doing something.
Yeah.
Even by physically not doing the activity, you may be doing the incorrect activity. And so having the right mental state of mind while doing the activity is also critical.
Definitely.
I don't think I can do I don't think this is I can't do justice, but I'll try to share that, because these even I look for these answers again and again and again. One of the other things I'll recommend is Chaitanya Charan Prabhu has answered this in the Spiritual Scientist website many years ago, 3-4 years ago. He had answered this same question by somebody, and one person has responded with a comment. And I heard this in a class by Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, that he was also like Lekha Mataji she shared, he was also very depressed, and he suddenly found meaning in the profession that he was in, even though it was because he attributed the you don't attribute sanctity to the profession. You have to, whatever work comes your way is critical, because taking care of your family and health is critical. Taking care of your family is critical. Obviously, if you can, if you are forced to do something, and that's the only profession you have. Let's say I'm the son of a butcher, and that's the only job that I have. Then that's a position that God has put me in. I may not have too much of a choice to walk out of it. So we have to consider that also.
Yeah.
But luckily, I think we are in a better position where we can make, we have better choices and we can make those choices. But we have to, sometimes you get these answers when you only look at these extreme situations. At least for me.
No, very true, Prabhu. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Is Lekha Mataji here?
Yes, she's here, Prabhu.
Yeah,
Yes,
sorry,
Prabhu.
I'm a little bit under. So if you open up 1847, Prabhu.
Yeah.
If you can share that. Yeah. So if you go down to the translation, so duties, duties per.
Sorry, translation or purport?
Translation. Yeah. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. So one thing that Lekha Mataji was asking was that, okay, I like robotics. And if I keep doing that, and if I keep thinking that, okay, I'm doing it for Krishna, am I doing it for Krishna? Oh, am I not doing it for Krishna? And you get overthink, overanalyze that. And then you lose the point. So basically, Krishna says, in a nutshell, there are two things that are very dear to him. One is, as we sail through this particular life, we have to do just two things. One is, we have to do our duty in our role perfectly. Okay, that is one thing. And then the second thing that he says is, do not cause any disturbance or pain to others. Can you open up 12:15, Prabhu? Bhagavad Gita 12:15.
Yes.
So that Yasman no dvijate loka, that verse. I think
No.
it's 12:14 or 12:15, I'm not sure. Yeah. So these are the two things that keep on coming up repeatedly. And I've heard several devotees say this, that if you do these two things perfectly, perform your role perfectly as a daughter, as a wife, as a husband, as a father, as a mother, whatever. And if you read this verse, he by whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone is actually very dear to me. So these are the basically, if you just do these two things perfectly in this life, you'll actually become very dear to Krishna. But if you think about it, even in the last 1 week, or even in the last 3 days, you can say, how many times have you run away from your role? How many times have you run away from your responsibility, from your duty? And how many times have you caused pain to others? If you actually think more about these two things, and if you try to fix them, you'll actually become very dear to Krishna, and Krishna will actually bless you for just doing these two things properly, rather than thinking, oh, am I offering it to Krishna? How much should I offer to Krishna? That comes later. But first, try to do these two things properly. Do your role perfectly as a father, as a husband, as a son, as a daughter, whatever that role is. Do that role and your dharma. Like if you found out that robotics is your thing, do that perfectly and don't cause annoyance or hurt others. Then you're good. So in one sense, I recently also, Krishnan Prabhu, you may have heard this also in the Wisdom of the Sages. They brought up, I mean, Kaustubha Prabhu mentioned these 2 points, and it really struck me actually. So that's why I'm repeating this. And I also went through several verses of the Gita where the same theme keeps coming up again and again. Krishna is not saying that, oh, you offer to me every time. That comes later, but at least do these two things properly. Does that answer, Lekha?
Yes, Prabhu, definitely. It's very actionable for me, and something that has a strong feedback that I can daily reflect upon. So definitely strikes a chord. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Krishnan Prabhu, you want to add to that? I think it was yesterday or day for yesterday's Wisdom of the Sages.
Can you
Yes,
share
I
that
probably haven't
podcast?
heard.
Sorry, Lekha Mataji?
Oh, sorry, I was just saying, if you get, can you just share with me that podcast as well, Prabhu? Like,
Yes,
or
yes.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah, Krishnan Prabhu.
I don't think that one. I don't think I've heard that one. I will. I don't think I've caught up on the last 2-3 days, so I'll listen to it. But it makes sense, Prabhu. That was a very extremely useful. I think we have to start there. We have to start there, and then later, uh, later move ahead. But
Yeah, I could, I mean, some
with
other
this,
people, the conservatives may not agree with me. I want to hear what Kameshwar Prabhu thinks about that. Kameshwar Prabhu, are you here?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah.
Yes,
It's
Prabhuji.
here.
So do you agree with that? I'm not even bringing Krishna in the picture here. I'm just saying do
Yeah.
your duty properly and you don't cause any pain to others. Will that actually satisfy Krishna or no?
Definitely, Prabhu. Definitely. This many times offline you told me,
No,
but
it's not about,
yeah,
anyway. What do you think? What do you think?
yeah. I'll definitely agree with this, Prabhu. Yeah, sure.
So if I may,
Yes,
as we said, this is, I guess it's a beginning stage for
yes,
sure.
yes, yes. But Krishna himself says you're very dear to me. Just don't cause any pain to others. You're dear to me. So if you want to be dear to Krishna, then just don't cause pain to others and just do your duty properly. And it's actually very difficult, actually, even to do these two things properly. And then you can think of offering to Krishna. If you're doing with so many faults, then how can you even offer to Krishna, right? I mean, you're causing pain to others
Yes.
on one hand, and then you say that I'm going to offer it to Krishna. Krishna won't accept it for sure. Simple. It's actually very simple.
Yes,
Yeah, Jagannath Gopal Prabhu.
No. That's good, Prabhuji. It's very nice. Yeah. Anyone? There was one comment from Vallabh Chaitanya Prabhu, but it is not sustainable. Do you want to elaborate on that, Prabhuji?
That is not, what is not sustainable?
I think he put that comment when we were discussing something,
I don't
but
know. I need to know what is not sustainable. I think this is sustainable to know whether you're
no,
doing.
no. Yeah. No, this no, this comment, came in the chat much before.
I see.
Yeah, I think it was before Prabhuji, so we can ignore it.
Does it make
Okay,
sense, Vallabh
okay.
Chaitanya Prabhu, what I said?
Yeah, but I feel how if we just focus on this one and we may forget Krishna also.
No, you
So
won't.
I feel in parallel, right?
See, that's the thing, Prabhu. If you're doing these two things properly, then Krishna will shower you with his affection. And when Krishna showers you with his affection, because you become very dear to Krishna, then you will actually make progress towards Krishna. Krishna will send you the right people, he'll send you the right guidance and so on. I'm not saying you should go away from Krishna or just forget Krishna. I'm just saying that if you do these two things properly, it is the first step. Actually, it almost like you can think of it as going into the mode of goodness, and then that will take you to the next step, like that. But we as devotees, we know that, that is our ultimate goal. But while you think of that as ultimate goal, don't neglect this immediate goal, is what I'm saying.
But if someone is following like devotion, how will they neglect this?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm telling you, right? Just think, Prabhu, even in your thing, in the last 1 week, how many times have you neglected your role as a husband? And how many times have you probably caused hurt to others? You can't say that I've not caused any hurt or I've neglected my duty as a husband or a son or something like that. Have you done your role perfectly? You're a
But
devotee.
then that would mean, Prabhu, that then I might be suppressing my emotions just to keep this in focus. So I don't want to disturb this person, so let me just tolerate and hold it on, and then later on it might become a huge thing.
So that's why I'm
So
saying, why are you suppressing? Because you want to be a good devotee. I'm saying, forget the fact that you're a devotee, but do these things properly.
yeah, I'm saying, if I focus on that I do not want to disturb the other person, then I will suppress, right? If I focus on, oh, I have to not say certain things or behave in a manner that if I am causing disturbance to the other person, then most of the time, at least in my case, I might be suppressing a lot of emotions, rather than I would express it and then pray that, or be sorry later on and become more humble that, oh, I did this mistake, rather than just focusing on I should not disturb the other person. And then it might also uh, put me in a corner also, that I don't want to disturb others, or I want to control my behavior. It won't be natural.
Yeah.
That is what I feel.
Kind of answered your question there, because you have to be genuine and you have to really work on yourself on the roles that you've been given. And that role could be a disciple or whatever, on all the roles that you've been given, just try to do all those roles perfectly. And then you will see how much you will attract Krishna's mercy without causing pain to others. Now, you're talking about the suppressing. So suppressing, when does it come? Because then I'm trying to be duplicitous, because externally, I don't want to show that if somebody has disturbed me, for example, I just should convey them according to my role. But if I don't do that, then I'm not doing my role properly, right? I don't know if I can think of an example here. Can you give me an example, Prabhu? Or I don't know, is it going way beyond time?
Let's say a child is let's say a child is not um, you know is not paying attention to their studies, and
Child,
your child is not paying attention,
okay, your child is not paying attention to
and you want
uh-huh.
to studies, and you want to and so you may have to um,
Chastise or
you
punish.
you may have to chastise them,
Yeah,
or
that is
punish.
that is your role as a mother, as a father. You're doing that for the ultimate good of the child. But if you neglect that, and if you suppress your emotions, or if you think that I would just want to be your definition of a good father or mother could be that, oh, I'm not going to hurt my child at all, then that is, you're not fulfilling your role properly. Does that make sense?
Yes. So even though, at the surface level, it may look like it has upset the child, but as long as the as long as your intentions are very clear,
Yeah. But you
and
must be careful. You must
and
be careful that you should genuinely, You should hiss, but you should not bite. So that, I mean, this is a whole parenting thing that I like to talk about. But you should hiss, but you should never get really angry. You should hiss so that the child becomes fearful for that moment and grows on the path. But you should never bite. You should genuinely never get angry and really take out your anger on the child. So that is the thing, and that is it's a
So
yeah.
this involves a lot of a mature, I mean, it takes a lot of maturity to this is Shreyas versus Preyas, right?
Yes.
Preyas is like
Long term and short term.
immediate purpose of not hurting someone by saying something versus the long term thing where we do give feedback to someone, but then in the long term uh, it's uh, it's beneficial. So
Yeah,
it does
yeah.
involve
I mean,
so that,
so that's
yeah.
why, Prabhu, even to do these two things that I said, it requires a lot of maturity. It requires a lot of maturity and to understand this. And many times devotees just think that like, the Krishna factor is there. I must just do it for Krishna, do it for Krishna. But then they forget the immediate things. And they're actually, by not doing the immediate things properly, you're actually hurting Krishna, thinking, but indirectly you're thinking that, or wrongly you're thinking that you're actually doing service to Krishna, but actually you're hurting Krishna. You're not being very dear to Krishna, actually. So that's my point. It requires a lot of maturity at the immediate level to handle all these things properly and do it perfectly. Then you'll attract Krishna's mercy. Otherwise, you are actually hurting Krishna. But you're thinking that you're actually doing a service to Krishna. So it's very, very what do you say? You're walking on a razor's edge. You'll be very, very, very careful and very, very mature to do these things. And yeah, the devotee tag comes, and then we start thinking that, oh, I'm a devotee, I must offer. So you have to be very, very careful. Like, what does a devotee mean? So as Vallabh Chaitanya Prabhu said, devotee means all these things are checked already. You're doing all these things properly. You're doing your role properly. You are not hurting anyone. If you're doing all that, then you can call yourself a devotee, not because you think that you're offering the results to Krishna. So it's very important for us to understand what even a devotee means. A devotee is a very, very high elevated platform. We can call ourselves aspiring devotees. I don't think I mean, at least myself, I can't call myself a devotee for sure, because I don't do my role properly, nor do I keep causing pain to others every single day. So I fail in these two things very badly.
Thank you for thank you for all your points, dear devotees. Yeah. Yeah, this is an interesting discussion. This can go on for long as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think yeah, we are good so far. So I think we'll meet next Tuesday again. And yeah, really encourage you all to sign up for the discussion. Um, next we'll be covering two chapters together because the verses and the purports are small, and it's the appearance of King Prithu, and you know the professional reciters present at the venue, they talk about his glories. So that's the next two chapters which we'll cover next Tuesday. So kindly consider signing up. It's a really nourishing experience to read the verses and purports of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is the topmost Purana, very purifying. So, and yeah, the best part is we don't just read and leave it, we actually contemplate. We contemplate and try to take out lessons. That is the best part of it. That is the purifying part of it. So yeah. So thank you so much for, I know, I mean, what Gaur Kumar Prabhu said is not really true. He's being humble. He's fulfilling all his roles very nicely. So are everybody here. Uh, yeah, but it's always nice to discuss these topics so that we can, you know, wherever we are, there is scope to grow. So we can grow like that together. So yeah, thank you very much, dear devotees. If there are any final thoughts.
And thank you, Jagannath Gopal Prabhu, for coming back and leading such a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much.
I don't know, bro. Thank you for your kind words, and I'm really happy to be back into this. So into all of your association, something that I was missing in India. So
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatra.
Vanchakalpatarubhyaścha
Kripa
Sindhubhyaścha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha.
Ananta Koti
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Vaishnava.